Hold me now, I'm 6 feet from the edge, and I'm thinking, maybe now. One time I walked into my friend's house, and one of our mutual friends was tripping balls on acid. And he just gestured to the mail on the table, pointed at the picture of Dan Newland with a baby face filter photoshopped on him, and went, "That man is a demon." And you know what? He may have had a point. He may have had a point. You know, John Morgan from Morgan & Morgan. That's the guy to call. He does good work. Seriously. This was like a decade ago, by the way. It's funny how far apart Noel's eyes are. You know that meme about the predator and prey, and it has a picture of a wall-eyed soy jack? It's taken with a fisheye lens next to a Giga Chad. Obviously, every Giga Chad is photoshopped. Focused forward, you know? Perfectly focused forward, as opposed to like the fisheye wrapping around the lens, sort of wall-eyed. You know, already a little bit of wall-eyed, but like hyper-advanced entire head wall-eyed. That's a funny predator-prey situation. I also like the one where you have the old monitors, of which there's like 3 over there, the old square monitors, as opposed to these big, wide, stupid ones, you know, the 1,000 compared to the like 700, you know, 1,500, 700 something. I don't know. Makes sense, you know. One is for Call of Duty. The other is for Stardew Valley. Not hating, and I don't even like Call of Duty, but apparently, you know, Black Ops 1, that's the best one. World of War, second best one. A lot of people, this is a contentious thing. People will fight you over this, but it's pretty solid. The first Black Ops, best Call of Duty game. Second best Call of Duty game, World of War. Sorry, not sorry. It's just what it is. People on Consider have been digging into Jersh. Apparently, they found evidence of him being into bestiality, literal pictures of him being into bestiality. And it's probably due to the sadism aspect. And he said he couldn't find the pictures that he liked in the bestiality scene, probably because he was looking for like real hardcore stuff. And you know, it's interesting. You have the timeline. He was very young, when he was like a young man, when he was, you know, 25, 26, still screwing around with 9chan, allowing pedophiles on his website. And it's just like, I don't think any of that's changed. I think he still has a horrifically disgusting, like incredibly encrypted folder that you would probably need to see a psychiatrist if you saw. I mean, it makes sense. Like the guy literally, I'm not joking, throughout the entire time I've ever known him, he abuses people at random. Like when he viewed me as valuable, he never abused me. But you know, it was always coming. It was always coming down the pipe. It's always coming down the pipe. He used Slav power, and Slav power was more useful than I was. Slav was a very technical Polish man who would like help catalog everything, and he got treated like absolute garbage, specifically because Null is a sadist. And what's funny, when you study sadism, masochism is always an element of sadism. They work together as a dyad. And I think a lot of his running a retard website, picking fights, that attention that he gets, that negative attention that he gets, he clutches onto that super hard. It just, you know, naturally, like nobody doesn't like when people come after their family. Naturally, that's not a good strategy. It's very, it's kind of like racism, you know, you're going after different people for the crimes of one person. That ain't right. That ain't right. But literally, he has his porn folder encrypted due to illegal content. People found messages of him saying this stuff back in the day. This is beyond just the Blockland stuff when he was a little kid. When he was a teenager, a late teenager, he had encrypted folders because of the illegality of the stuff on there, which means it's not just cartoons. It means that there is literally like pictures of children on Null's hard drive. And I hope the FBI has his number, because they know where he lives and he cannot escape them. And now that he's in the US, not only did he lose his $100,000 expat tax, he's not allowed to do what all the Germans do. He's back in America. People are going to take their anger out on him, and they have every right to do so. And I will be here to sit back, catalog things, and press him as hard as I possibly can within the boundaries of legality. And damn you, Matthew Harden, damn you to the lowest pits of hell, you little scumbag. You take the money, okay, enjoy having your entire life get ruined. Every single person Josh has ever been around had their entire life ruined. He even said back in the day, in the specific Man of the Internet podcast, Ham Satellites, that Sam Hyde, give me your career. I'll run it into the ground. I'll run it so far to the ground. You'll be so screwed. Come on, work with me, buddy. That's him verbatim. I'm quoting him, paraphrasing, of course, but like I got the emphasis. I got like, if you go back and look at the Mad at the Internet episode of Ham Satellites, that's how he starts off after the MDE music, the extreme, well, I think it was like world peace music or something. You know, one of Sam's buddy's songs. And yeah. And I can also you can go back and dig into his old posts on the website and find out that he stands for nothing. Like, he simps for Israel, but he's incredibly anti-Semitic, and it's just like, he's racist, so he only cares about the politics of the matter. Me, on the other hand, I'm the opposite. Most people are opposite. They're not racist towards Jews. They just hate the politics of Zionism, global Zionism, and Israel being a pariah state where there's tons of pedophiles, 900,000 pedophiles, which is probably why he's wanting to, ingratiate himself in those communities, specifically so he can flee from the U.S. when his crimes start to stack up to the point where they're unavoidable for the authorities. Maybe he'll pay off some bribes here and there, but I really do hope somebody takes some initiative. That'd be great. We'll see. We'll catalog things as it goes down. Apparently those were from 2008, so he was in high school, but this is another missing link leading up to now. So you have him watching child torture porn when he was in middle school, bestiality when he was in high school. After he graduated, then sometime around the time he went to a Japanese bathhouse with Frederick Brennan, he was hosting child porn on 9chan, which I estimated he was about 27, 28 or so when that was going down. Now, this is the slippery slope of having completely unrestricted internet access because his mom was, and I'm not trying to, go after her or ruin her life or anything. This is an objective fact. His mom was a fag hag, so she brought him around homosexuals when he was a young age, and God only knows. But literally, it's like his own choices. Whatever happened to him, his own choices led him down, because he had nobody to guide him, led him down and he thought it was okay when he was younger, led him down that horrible, horrible route. And though he provides lip service, he's probably completely and utterly screwed and is not the sort of person you want to have as your North Star when it comes to these issues. He can fight with the VTubers all he wants. He can farm, bot content on Xitter all he wants. That's fine. But at the end of the day, when it comes to him actually running a business, nobody should want to be associated with that. Naturally, it starts with him being groomed, but it then turns into him pursuing more and more extreme pornography, many such cases. And from the looks of it, his brain is completely broken. It's been that way for close to 2 decades. These are important things to note when it comes time to take a wrecking ball to his political ambitions if he has them, and prevent him from convincing good people to donate to him on false pretenses like Blessed Twinkletard, who hopefully has gotten out of there. I think he has for the last year or so. He would give him $100 every week, twice sometimes. Hopefully Twinkletard, good Texan man, got the hell out of there. Good golly, did I dodge a bullet with that one. Holy crap, Lois. Imagine how bad my life would have been if I actually went up to Wyoming to work for this worthless little creep. God's looking out, God's looking out. Mysterious ways. I had to go through that valley of the shadow in order to learn and go up even higher, because that's, my friends, the hero's journey. Indeed, indeed. Doesn't mean you want to invite strife on yourself now. Sometimes these things, when your heart's in the right place, but your mind isn't, you got to go through these things. They're important. They're good for your development. Can't help but think it had something to do with me weeping before the altar and giving myself to Christ fully. I think that's what it was. I'm a very loyal person. I'm loyal to a fault. Now, the only person I need to be loyal to is God. Funny. They say Judas knew the price of everything, yet knew the true value of nothing. Wise words. Wise words. The new Syrian leader has very poor calligraphy. Assad had significantly better calligraphy. In the Arab world, the better the leader's calligraphy, the better a ruler he would be. This is law, and it applies. An image popped in my head last night as I was falling asleep. It was me and Null fighting with Sean from Potentially Criminal as the crying furry child in the middle, and I swear to God, I laughed until I woke myself up. I really do love that man, and I do think he's a good guy. Like, beyond loyalties, I really do think he's a good guy. You know, big guys, they tend to be jolly, you know, even though they, like, people don't know the suffering that a lot of big guys have, but they tend to be jolly. And that's an interesting thing, you know. Some fat people are evil, but not Sean. Definitely not Sean. Polish people probably have the best name for an ambulance chaser lawyer. It's pronounced Boguslaw. Really missed opportunities with Arcada not naming his channel Boguslaw. That would have been perfect. Or Baldo Law. That's what they call it, Baldo Law, man. It's absolutely insane. The Masoud Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, looks like a bizarro world version of Netanyahu. All Netanyahu needs is the goatee, so we can tell he's actually the evil twin by looking. But we can actually determine by looking around his eyes and the area around his mouth. These muscles that get trained as your brain activates without you, like, you know, willing it to be that way, unless you're an actor or a psychopath, in which case it's too activated like Jim Carrey, or not activated enough like a, you know, on lots of pills psychopath. That general sober area allows your face, especially over decades, to program your thoughts. And if they're consistent, say you're consistently evil, you're a baby-killing maniac, and you do anything for like the tiniest little crumb of power, which is super funny because that's essentially like he's in the desert, no man's bad land, trodden over for 60,000 years, and that land is tapped out. And Israel has ruined, you know, sometimes you even wonder, it's just like, does he know all this stuff? Is he intentionally suicide bombing the entire Zionist career to destroy the Warburgs and the Rothschilds and the Bilderbergs and the Rockefellers? Is he a kamikaze bonsai fighter? You never know. You never know the intent of people's heart, and that's why it's important to try to be as kind and as gentle and as patient as possible. But when you know something's up, speak on it. And that's the old phrase, when you see something, say something. You better be sure that you're seeing with the eyes open, as Terry would say. You gotta see with the eyes open. Open your eyes! Please! Yeah, but for real, open your eyes. Let me tell you a little something someone very smart taught me. First, let's establish the archetypal dyad of the Janus face. Janus is a Greek god that is very cognate with Gemini, and Janus is the literal namesake of January. So the Greeks were the first to develop, you know, ancient Ankarian method clock, which is the first computer from like 2,500 years ago, at least. And because they developed moon cycles, they created sundials. They, you know, and the first people in the world, there's these Dwemer, you know, smiths that used ancient Bronze Age / Neolithic knowledge and Bronze Age technology to create sundials and actually a prototype clock that could predict eclipses very accurately, almost with perfect accuracy, I think. Perfect accuracy. The Ankarian method. Like there's it's a fossil, essentially. It's super old. And because of that, they got to name the first month, which is named after Janus. Now, the Janus is also represented in Greek theater. The two masks in Greek theater that represent comedy and tragedy can be described as a Janus face. It is accurate, although rarely do people professionally say that. They say comedy, tragedy, Greek masks. They're both a Janus face. You could call them as a singular item a Janus face, right? Okay, now that we have established that, both are based on a lie. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead of my notes. That's all lies! No, I'm just kidding. In modern politics, post-industrial politics, but also we can get into some pre-industrial politics too, a vast majority of politics, public sector stuff, is operated on the dichotomy of performative cruelty and performative saccharin. That is, artificial sweetness and cruelty. Which is oftentimes artificial cruelty, because if you're really, like, if your heart is in it, your cruelty will be directed like a drill sergeant to the benefit of the person that you are being cruel to. Which is to say, like, what would you rather have? Somebody condescending at you and thanking you, or somebody just telling you straight up what you need to do? You know, sometimes you got to push that to a little bit of cruelty. That's real cruelty. That's high vibration cruelty. But low vibration cruelty is fake cruelty, and low vibration kindness is saccharin. You know, artificially sweet that some people just eat up because they want to be lied to. Big thing with the modern media, you know, they tell people what they want to hear, and they do it in a way that's like Pretty Women and, or, you know, this, that, and the third, or they got the right races in there and all that. You know, both the far left and the far right indulge this, and even it's creeping into the center and is pulling people apart. But let's continue. Both of these are based on a lie, as I have described. The cruelty is there to make you go, at least I'm not them. But at the end of the day, in a very real way, you are them, and what happens to them echoes out into the universe. And what you do unto the least of thee, you do unto Christ. Naturally, because he was a very intelligent human when he was in human form, and he tried to pass on as much knowledge as possible. Even if you don't believe in the divinity of Christ, he was a genius. And in a very real way, you are them. So when evil things happen, you feel it. This is your innate desire for justice, which is a balance of things that is often weaponized by the state to make an unworthy victim, like the Christians of Rome, not like us, and not in the high vibration, you know, Kendrick Lamar way, because Drake really isn't like most people, good people especially. He's a pedophile. Not fit for this world. Yeah, you also have gladiator games, hell, our UFC fighters and football players are beating their wives to near death in an elevator, strangling dogs in a tub, getting away with it as long as they smash their own brains out in the Coliseum, baby. And performative saccharin is the advertising industry's main theme, buttering you up and babying your sensibilities. Oh, you're a little good boy, you need a treaty treat, while selling you literal, actual poison to slowly kill yourself with. Now, let me read a text that I sent a good friend. Let's check this out real quick. Give you one moment, I apologize. Now, to go back through, there's a concept in Greek mythology known as the Janus face. This is the concept of the month of January is named after. It is often depicted as a single being with two faces, one associated with comedy and the other with tragedy. This is an archetype. It is shot through various cultures all over the world, often called the Gemini in zodiacal mythology. But it is also a demon, like how most of the Hindu pantheon are archetypal demons that also appear in other cultures independently. In the modern world, the Janus faces are very important for politics. From Hitler to Thatcher to Obama. These two themes are valuable to understand in the theater of the public sector. The comic face is performative saccharin, and the tragic face is performative cruelty. This is also a theme in pagan Rome. Performative saccharin is the teary-eyed juche theatrics around the flag, the anthem, the aesthetics, the skin deep of our country. Not the deep, deep appreciation of our people, our culture, our constitution, our Christianity, but the surface-level plastic American flag made in China. Performative cruelty is Gestapo's, concentration camps, our noble heroes versus their savage barbarians, when we are all children of God, made in his image, with an inherent disposition towards goodness that can be coaxed out with patience and love. The cruelty and the saccharin both are important for controlling the politician's base. Saccharin for allies, cruelty for enemies. Feeding the Christians to lions while you proclaim your king to be a demigod and following him to be the only virtue necessary. Our founding fathers foresaw this issue as students of history and of the classics and of prescient political problems. And so, in our nation, we have endowed all men with inalienable human rights. The right to avoid molestation at the whims of the government, and to find liberty and justice for all in the diligent work of our police, our courts, and our politicians, the three branches of government that have checks and balances on each other. We must not forget our blessings. As many people know, the power that is given to the government is not easily, if ever, wrested back to the people. And it only takes one election for all the powers we gave them to turn back on us. I'll end this message with this, and I appreciate your time reading this. When the Soviet Union collapsed in the 90s, Bill Clinton and his pedophile friends worked overtime to channel all the evil spirits into our country, and you can see how things have been downhill ever since. I do not regret voting for Trump. His foreign policy is impeccable, and he is not an established in-network elite politician, but that does not mean he is infallible. Straight up. And by the way, we were talking about alligator Alcatraz, that's to Satan. I've been calling him to Satan for years. I dropped that for a little while, especially around the Andrew Tate getting the boot, situation. He's to Satan. He is a stupid monster, prideful, wrathful idiot that's going to end up screwing himself over and a lot of people around him, but ultimately will not be nearly as damaging as a very, very, very intelligent operator like Rick Scott. Lizard person. Funny little bit of history. Savoy is a nation in between Turin and Genoa. Not to be confused with Geneva, which is the lake in Switzerland. Genoa, on the border of France and Italy. Founded by a guy named Duke Amadeus VIII, who was, funny enough, the last anti-pope. That is, somebody who declares himself pope while there is a different pope in Rome. Savoy would go on to unite into a country called Sardinia-Piedmont, and from there, Garibaldi would unite Italy. Like Germany and medieval France, establishing a lingua franca as an administrative language, regardless of the various dialect it doesn't account for, in Italy. I found this fascinating. Italy itself is hypocritical. Its foundation is protestation of the very thing that ever made the Italian race worth a bucket of warm piss. The evolution of the SPRQ, the Papal States. I guess you can point to the impressive feats of colonization from Genoa, as the small state managed to establish firm holdings in Azov, way over in the northeast of the Black Sea, and in the Aegean Sea. But Columbus ruined their state's prestige by lying, cheating, stealing, raping, temporarily becoming a pirate, and then dying on the cannibal coast of Mexico. A little history for you. Slinging at your head like a skittle full speed. Those websites are so boring these days. It's great if you're the sort of person who wants to watch somebody defend Israel and then defend VTubers in the same breath. But the genuine comedy in the website is utterly dead, and trust me, I know what it used to be like, We go back through the years. Chris, peak Chantal, shitting all over the bathroom. Pre-Xanax Ralph. Although the shaking the pills was a little funny. Who the hell am I supposed to look at? Whose thread are active now? Cyrax? You joking? Some literally whose tweets who I don't care about, it's not funny? Where's the beef? Nah, but for real, I watched good users flood out of the web zone. When they came to the conclusion, very likely I can't make that, assumption for them. Very likely when they came to the conclusion that Null is not only a useless retard who can't defend his website from literally two people, but a hack sellout with no principles who constantly abuses people while hiding behind cutesy pictures. And he's fat! Slobber suckers love to say Null's building his own little eye internet, but the fact of the matter is, Mans isn't even close to understanding how complex all of that is. He's working on baby's first cloud service with other people's work. And you know what? Furries aren't inherently evil, right? But there 100% needs to be a test, like the test they give pedophiles like Null, where they take furries and monitor their vitals and brain activities while showing them, instead of pictures of children, pictures of roadkill and see what their reactions are and go from there. Be a good test. Every time Bren Daniel plays Resistance 2, I get a psychic premonition and I tune in right as the stream starts. Without notifications. Peem Brendan. Is Brandon in the shooter slop mines, getting shooter slop lung down with the subterranean shooter slop boys. I'm really not all that into simulator slop Brendan, but we all have our ups and downs, Me and my nicotine of Scoldgers riding into Copenhagen. Dip now if you think you're not up to snuff. I'm a real big fan of science fiction. Or at least I was more when I was younger. Care more about like the deepness of reality and the nonfiction science. But stuff that's fleshed out as our world is today is quite fascinating. Which is today is a science fiction fantasy land compared to 3,000 years ago, but still has a lot of familiar things and immortal archetypes shot through like rebar. Both dates as a connective tissue, 3,000 years ago and 2,000 today. 3,000 years ago and today. And it's important to see those connected tissues for an understandable timeline, and some science fiction does not have that. Warhammer 40k is really good for this. Star Trek is really good for this. But a really, really good, underrated science fiction timeline is the timeline for All Tomorrows, which doesn't always have the best prose and doesn't always have the best writing, and in some ways is kind of more of a bestiary than like a menagerie of descriptions of future animals as opposed to an actual book. But it's still fascinating, and it gives you a lot of room, a lot of wiggle room to imagine things with these absolutely far out concepts. Where the Q come to Earth and bioengineer humanity into a bunch of different things, and then they further adapt and change through the timeline. Man After Man also does this, namely the latter aspect, and it's more of a novel, you know? But in my opinion, it's actually not as good. Check out All Tomorrows on Bewarecast. It's you can get the whole audiobook right there. It's pretty short. On a personal level, I really, really, really hate zombie movies. That is the generic dime a dozen zombie movies. I love Shaun of the Dead and Zombieland, and I'm always impressed when there's really good atmosphere, like some of those early, zombie hits. But World War Z perfectly encapsulate what zombie movies are actually for. They're for acclimating people towards shooting groups of people who are running, injured, angry, and or terrified, and to make you feel like the Mary Sue main character, the only person in the world whose life matters so much that you get to survive when 95% of other people don't. Because of course, why not? Alright, y'all. Got a lot of stuff that I attend to, so care. Cheers.